I'm Norman Liss. The name of the program is The Way to Go. I invite you to join me each week at this time as we explore places to go and things to do. We're starting at the beginning today. As a matter of fact, we're starting at the Creation, which will be at the Purchase Performing Arts Center in December. And I'm delighted and honored to have as my guest Jane Glover, who is the conductor, world-renowned conductor of opera, choral, orchestra, City Opera in New York. I'm so glad that you could come here and talk about the orchestra and conducting an orchestra. And so, is it daunting to stand there in front of a huge audience or in front of an orchestra and have all that power in your little baton? Or do you use a big baton?
No, I use quite a small one, and sometimes, of course, I don't use one at all. But when you have a lot of people, I think it is quite necessary just to have that little extension of your arm, which is what the baton is. I don't much like the use of the word power, because it's something I never feel aware of at all. It's certainly daunting to stand in front of an audience, and that is a kind of familiar fear or despair that any performer, I'm sure, will talk to you about. Even
though you've been doing this for a long time?
It absolutely doesn't get easier at all, and I'm sure all performers tell you that too. There is no... and I think we would be worried if it did get easier, if we became sort of matter-of-fact or routine about this whole business of walking out in front of an audience and giving them their money's worth. And even talking about it now, my stomach is crunching.
And being loved and being appreciated?
There's nothing to do with being loved. It's because they're not there for me. They're there to come and hear a performance of Haydn's Creation or a Gluck opera or a Beethoven symphony. That's what they're there for. And I'm merely the conduit for Beethoven or Gluck or Haydn in these instances.
But what a conduit! Every conductor brings something to the orchestra. I feel that the orchestra is an instrument that the conductor is playing, or the chorus. That you have talented musicians, and those musicians are responding to what you want them to do. How do you determine what you want them to do?
Do you mean how do I rehearse them? Or?
No. How do you determine what your interpretation of a piece or a work that someone else has done before? What is it that you give to it, and where does that come from?
It's a sort of backwards question, if you'll forgive me saying so, because I don't pick up a score of something and say, no, I know that Leonard Bernstein did it like this, and George Schulte did it like this, but somebody else did it like this. Now, how am I going to do it to make it different? I pick up a score and I just look to see what it is. And I don't think the conductor should ever be in the way. And one of the reasons, for instance, why one of my personal gurus is Bernard Haitink, is that I don't think he is ever in the way. When Haitink conducts Mahler, you get Mahler. You don't get Haitink's Mahler. You know, it's this wonderful sort of self-effacing musician, which I don't think the conductor should ever be interposed.
I think you're too modest when you say get out of the way, because if you're only there to interpret or to convey what the composer has wanted, then anybody who does the same thing will end up with exactly the same.
No, they won't. No, of course they won't. That's your point, isn't it? Yeah. Because we are all different. But it's no different from the way three actors will play Hamlet. You know, the conductor brings to a musical score what an actor brings to a theatrical role.
But the actor and the director are two different people. The member of the orchestra and the conductor are the same as the director and the actor. So is it what you're bringing to the score, or is it what the individual musicians are bringing to the score?
Oh, they contribute an enormous amount, of course.
Different orchestras will treat your interpretation differently?
Possibly. I mean, particularly when we get into the sort of the nitty-gritty of period instruments or modern instruments, and indeed talking about a piece like The Creation, you may well ask me crossly why we're not doing it on original instruments.
Why aren't you doing this on original?
That's I thought you'd never ask. I'd love to do it on original instruments, and I do work on original instruments quite a lot. And I've done Schumann and Mendelssohn, but no further into towards us than that. But I work in the 17th century entirely on original instruments. I think there is some sort of corner turned around mid-18th century, around 1750, maybe a little earlier, because I do actually perform Handel on modern instruments, by which I mean that you can achieve the sort of quality of sound and the articulation of sound on modern instruments by doing different things with bows or different things with articulation, and you can achieve, I think, the colours and the textures of original instrument performance on modern instruments.
Do you hear, when you read a score, do you hear in your head
Yes.
the way it should sound?
Yes.
And do you get that when you go into rehearsal?
Not immediately. No, and that's what you work for. And then, but of course the whole process of rehearsal is a two-way thing, in the same way that the whole process of performance is a two-way thing. I mean, audiences should never underestimate the role that they play in the way a performance is going.
Why does the audience play a role?
Because they are there.
Actors say that. I didn't realize that musicians would say the same thing.
Why not? What's the difference between the performance of music and the performance of drama?
I don't know how to answer that, and I'm glad you're not interviewing me. I don't know the answer to that question. And so you say there is a very strong parallel between the performance of music and the performance of drama.
Well, I think the performance of anything which involves, people sitting down and being committed to it. I think that's the extraordinary thing about audiences, is that everybody who walks into that auditorium is there to hear the creation or to see King Lear or whatever. There is a 100% commitment of everybody in that room to that piece that night for the next 3 hours. We are all going to be, all of us, performers and audience, involved in this journey. And the audience is involved in it just as much as the performers, and they often take away, we hope, if we do it right, as much of the sort of cathartic emotion that we have also been through. And you must feel that as a member of the audience yourself. I mean, obviously it doesn't happen every time.
And if you do the same program 2 nights in a row, or is it different?
Oh, very much so. I mean, I work a lot in opera where, you do repeated performances.
Or the Philharmonic will do the same program on Thursday and again perhaps on Monday.
Very much so. Very much so. The performance will be different. And thank goodness. I mean, wouldn't it be awful if we just did carbon copies of something?
Does the audience hear the difference if they would attend both performances?
Probably, yes, probably.
In what way?
Well, obviously things happen. Somebody might miss a top C.
But I wasn't talking about that particularly. I was talking about what's different in
many of these things are intangible, and but the pacing might be a little tighter. Somebody sings particularly well, and so somebody else sings well to come up to that performance. Like a game of tennis, mixed in doubles. If your partner is playing well, then you play well. If your opponents are playing really, really well, then they're stretching you. Do you see what I mean?
I do, but how do you, as the conductor, bring out the best in those instruments, whether they be musicians or whether they be singers or soloists?
You mustn't make that distinction, Singers get very upset when you make this implication that they are not musicians.
I'm talking about the people who are playing instruments as opposed to people who are singing
right.
Individually or singing in a chorus. How do you bring out the most? What do you give them to make them the best?
It's partly, obviously there must be some sense of leadership, but and some sort of inspiration, which is a kind of communication which is based thoroughly on knowledge of the score. You know, you must never be unprepared, but also an eloquence of gesture which enables them to give of their best. And it's also a lot of eye contact. I mean, I can't bear these performers who head down, you know. But actually, if you look at a singer or look at a player, you will have a much better response with eye contact. And it is actually all to do with this business of everybody believing in the score, but also in each other, and that you're about to play the violin. I think you're extremely talented. You trust me. I trust you. Let's go out and have fun. Often, you know, standing in the wings with a concerto soloist before we go on, the orchestra will tune and just as we go on, the soloist and I will look at each other and say, "Let's have fun." And that's a really nice way of going out to make music together. And I think always that's why, you know, your very first question to me today had the word power in it. And I don't think that making music is a question of exerting power.
But some conductors are known or have been known to be tyrants.
But if I could just finish what I was saying, I think what the making of music is a process of collaboration, and as I say, bringing out the best in people, if you can. I mean, heaven's sake, I don't. You know, we are all human, and I don't always get it right. But that is my preferred method. I'm not a stander and a shouter, and a screamer.
As some are.
I believe so. But, you know, I think I have my own methods of trying to make things better in rehearsal.
I do want to get specifically into the creation in just a moment, but first I do want to remind our viewers that I'm talking today with Jane Glover, the conductor of the creation, which will be at the Purchase Performing Arts Center on December 5th, December 19th at 8 o'clock. Into this whole subject of preparation and doing many things at once. You're conducting in New York, you're conducting at Purchase, you're traveling all over the world. How do you keep it all straight in your head? There are so many things happening, and how do you have the time? And just don't tell me it's hard work.
Well, no, but you have to be very organised, you really do. But of course, we aren't alone. You know, I have managers. I have a manager here in New York. I have a manager. My main management office is in London, where I come from.
But the focus is all on you, isn't it? I mean, if you don't do it, nothing's going to happen.
But they organise the diary, you know. They organise the schedule. And yes, of course. And what one has to build into one's schedule oneself is preparation time. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand, least of all one's manager. One thinks sometimes.
What is the preparation process? What's taking place?
Learning a score. It's again like this actor learning a role. You have to sit down and learn it. You can't just. I mean, somebody said, "Oh yes, we could put Jane on to do the Prokofiev Second Symphony tomorrow." Can't. I've never done it. I don't know it. I'm not going to go in and sight read it in a rehearsal. I would never jump in and do something I'd never opened a score of before, ever.
Let's be specific about the creation now. The creation is orchestra, chorus, soloists, each playing a different role, each a different musician. I've learned my lesson. Each and the words. Now, the words were not originally written in English, but they're in English. You're doing it in English.
Yes, it's very interesting because the creation it was originally written in German by Haydn. That was a sort of Freudian slip because it was the first of the German oratorio tradition, which Haydn had learnt in England when he was in England in the 1790s, 200 years ago, and heard performances of Handel's Messiah and other oratorios. And he was incredibly impressed by those because the oratorio as such in German-speaking countries was not this sort of dramatic event. It was not a sort of Lenten substitute for opera, which it was in England. It didn't tell these biblical stories. It was a very much more remote thing. And Handel, by the time Handel was actually dead, of course, by the time Haydn heard these performances, but he was still incredibly popular, and his oratorios, not just Messiah, but many of them were being performed again and again and again every year in London, and Haydn heard these, as did his very important patron, Baron von Swieten, who was in the diplomatic service. I think we'd now say, he was an ambassador first in Berlin and then in London. And he was terribly keen on this stuff and wanted Mozart and Haydn because they were the two great composers of the day, to do this kind of music, this sacred music, but in a dramatic way. And so it was first done in German, but it feels right doing it in English. We have a few translation problems, but not many. And
how important are the words?
Absolutely crucial. Without them, we might as well just play symphonies.
My experience is that listening, especially to choral work, that the words are very hard to hear.
Well, we will work. I promise you. I give you my absolute 100% promise that we will work very hard so that when you come to Purchase on the 19th of December and sit there in the audience, you will hear every word. They are crucially important, particularly as this is, I don't know how much you know about the creation, but it's in 3 parts. And it is literally the story of God creating the world. And it is a fabulous piece, not least because I think you believe that Haydn believes every word of this. He was not a man who believed in cosmic bangs, as the beginning of the... He believed that God thought, I will now create a world, and the first thing we do is make light. And the next thing we do is we make continents and sea and mountains. And it is incredibly sort of inventive and individual. And the first part is all about the continents and the, light and trees and nature. The second part is all about creating the animal kingdom. And it's so witty, as apart from anything else. He describes jumping animals, and he describes worms, and he describes insects. And gradually he gets on to, towards the end of the second part, creating the most important thing, which is man. At the end of the second part, he has created man, this thinking creation. And then the third part, which is slightly different from parts 1 and 2, is actually the first 2 parts have been told, as it were, via angels and a narrator. Part 3, the characters change, and we have Adam and Eve. And basically we get some of the best love music that anybody ever wrote. We get Adam and Eve as human beings discovering each other. And so you get the whole gamut of what happened in those 7 days.
Does the audience hear that? How do you get the singers to enunciate so that could be heard?
Oh, they will. I promise you, they will. You'll hear them. You really will.
Is that technique? Because
yes,
it's so
technique.
Often that it doesn't happen.
It is technique. It is technique. I'm sure you're familiar with Richard Strauss's opera Capriccio, which is basically a sort of intellectual essay on what opera is. And it's, there's this allegorical discussion between the poet and the composer as to which of them is more important, and whether we are, in the Italian words, prima le parole, dopo la musica, first the words and then the music, or prima la musica, dopo le parole, whether the word this comes second. And I'm very much a prima le parole person.
But I feel, listening to opera, that sometimes the knowing the words get in the way of hearing the music and hearing the voices, because it's too difficult to try and focus on it. Subtitles bother me a great deal. So, but you feel that the words are very important.
Well, without the words, there would be no tunes.
Yes, they're part of the structure, but they get in the way of my brain being able to focus on what to me is the great part of it, which is the music.
So why do you go to the opera?
For the music and the
and
voices.
not for the drama?
No, the drama in most cases is not particularly good. It's opera drama.
So you would dismiss Verdi's Macbeth or Othello or The Ring.
Especially since I know how it ends, so I really don't have to listen.
But you know
There's
how
no
King Lear
suspense.
ends.
Same thing.
But you know how King Lear ends.
It's the music. It's not.
But
the
there's
words.
no music in King Lear. That's what I'm saying.
But the music of the rhythms and all that goes. It's so we disagree on that, obviously.
Well, yes, I don't know why you go to the theatre then. If you, when you go to the theatre to see a play by Shakespeare, why is that different from going to hear a Mozart opera?
I hope that's a rhetorical question.
No,
because
I'm
not gonna
expecting an answer. I'm expecting an answer.
Let me ask
this is
you
a really, really interesting thing. I'm really interested to know because it's useful for audience research.
When you come back, we'll do it the other way. You'll interview me and find out why I go to the theatre and why I go to hear opera.
But, I mean, Mozart's Marriage of Figaro, for instance, is as profound and multi-layered and important a drama as Shakespeare's As You Like It.
But I don't have to concentrate on the story because I'm there for the music. That's my interpretation. Let me ask about another interpretation so that I can switch
if you concentrate on the story, you'd enjoy the music even more.
Perhaps.
You really would, I assure you.
Perhaps.
You really mustn't divorce them.
Maybe I've learned something from this conversation today about listening to opera.
The words are always important, and even in something that doesn't appear to be dramatic, like the Creation, but actually is. Or even the words of the Mass, religious music. They are wonderful, wonderful words.
One of the wonderful words that we must do is to make sure that we give the telephone number that people should call concerning information about not only the Creation, but also certainly give them information about everything that's happening at the Performing Arts Center.
Definitely.
And that telephone number is 914-251-6200, and we'll put that up in the closing credits so people can make sure. People don't always have a pen in the hand as you always have a baton in your hand. One of the questions that I'm sure you've been asked over and over and over again, it's obvious that there aren't many in proportion women conductors. Why?
You're right, I have been asked this question before, and I still don't really know how to answer it, except to say that it is one of the professions of which there are very few left now, which have been hitherto dominated by men and are just taking a little more time for women to come into. That's a horrible grammatical sentence. I apologise for it. At the beginning of the century, certainly in my country, in Europe, there were very few women lawyers, for instance. There were very few women doctors. There were certainly no women politicians. It's very rare even now for there to be women politicians. I mean, you have Madeleine Albright. We had Lady Thatcher. But even newsreaders, I mean, in your business, I think perhaps women didn't get a look in. And finally, they are. Now there is sort of...
Do you find it an advantage or a disadvantage to be a woman?
Well, when I started, it was definitely both, in sort of equal proportions. It was, I mean, I've been in this business now over 20 years, and I have to say that when I did start in the mid-70s, I did feel a bit lonely. Now I would say women conductors are growing on trees, and the more the merrier.
You're saying lonely in
I mean, what I meant was that there weren't very many of us.
There weren't. I understood that. But now you're facing an orchestra, and certainly large professional orchestras have their own personality and their own confidence, and a stranger comes in to conduct with a reputation, without a reputation, and you conduct with many orchestras all over the world, and in comes a woman with a reputation. Is it a difficult problem for you to get their confidence?
It's a difficult problem.
Because you're a woman, I'm saying.
Well, no, you see, every conductor faces this, whether you're a man or a woman. It is always hard to face a new orchestra for the first time. And I honestly cannot, I'm not evading the question, but I cannot generalise. For instance, different countries react in completely different ways. I've worked quite a lot in China, for instance, And when I first went there to the Central Opera Company in Beijing, the music director of that is a woman, and she's wonderful, by the way. And so they didn't think it was the slightest bit extraordinary that I came along. I mean, they're perfectly used to that. Certain countries in Europe still don't much like women coming in. Here in America, I've always felt very warmly welcomed. But you have to remember that actually what musicians want, orchestral musicians want, regardless of gender, what really matters is what the music sounds like. Can we do it? You know, can we make them play well? Can we convey our vision of a piece of music and communicate it first to them and then to them? And if we can't, then we're booted out.
With your reputation, and you have a wonderful reputation, when you come to an orchestra today, you're respected before you even walk in the door. Was it always that way?
Well, of course not. I mean, when you're beginning, nobody knows who you are. And that's what I was saying, that for every young conductor, the hard rungs on the ladder are the first ones. I don't mean to imply that it gets easier after that. It doesn't.
It is hard work, isn't it?
But it's just actually stepping onto that ladder for any conductor. And that's when you asked me, was it an advantage or a disadvantage? When I started, it was because I was unusual.
Yes.
You know, it was in many ways an advantage, but it was a disadvantage in the sense that I got a lot of publicity, but generally about the wrong aspects of what I was doing. People wrote articles about my shoes, not what the music sounded like. And that's all calmed down a lot now because as I say, there were.
How did you respond to that?
Well, what can one do, you know?
Change your shoes. And what we have to do is change our time because we've run out of time. And one of the difficulties in having someone as interesting as you are is that you really don't have time to cover everything that you want to do. And I thank you so much for being here.
Great pleasure. Great pleasure.
Thank you. My guest today is Jane Glover, who is conducting the Creation at SUNY Purchase, the Performing Arts Center, on December 19th. A wonderful, wonderful program. Go see it. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. I'm Norman Liss. The name of the program is The Way to Go. And until next week, enjoy yourself.